Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last session of our 10-year event. The first panel discussion is on the value of international collaboration. And on the panel, we have Dr. Preetha Rajaraman, Dr. Arabinda Mitra. I invite the panel members to come on the stage. Dr. Daniel Shah, Dr. Alka Sharma, and Dr. Lalita. The moderator for this session will be Dr. Simon Kay. Simon Kay is Head of International Operations and Partnerships at Wellcome. He leads the Wellcome Trust capacity building initiatives in Africa and Asia, including support for funding that Wellcome has established in Africa and, of course, India Alliance. Before his international career with the British Council, he studied zoology, and he has a PhD in tumor immunology at the University of Nottingham. He regrets that his frequent travel takes him away from his fish, his cat, and his family, in that order. So, over to you, Simon.
Good. So, welcome, everybody. This is, I don't think that's on, is it? Can you hear me? Good. So this is that sort of part of the day. We're 3 days into the conference. It's that part of the meeting where everybody wants to go to sleep. So let me just start by asking you a question. Who here thinks international collaboration is a good thing? Put your hand up. Don't see everyone. Good. And who here thinks international collaboration is a bad thing? Right. So do we carry on, or do we need this panel? Yeah. Good, okay. So no, I'm going to try and keep you awake. And also to keep you awake, I'm going to pepper you with sort of questions, invite you to comment. In fact, I'm going to break with tradition already and see if there's one person from the audience here who would like to actually just tell me what you want to get out of this session. I don't almost care what it is, but one person from the audience, tell me what you want to get out of this session. Who's going to... Yes.
Proportionate distribution of research funds based on health needs across the globe.
Wow. Okay, so we bear that in mind. One of you is going to get that question towards the end, so you've got time to reflect on it. So just sort of a couple of thoughts before we start, and it's difficult to think about how do we frame a discussion on international collaboration. So I'm going to suggest, although I'll ask each of the panelists just to reflect on their own experience and their own role, and they'll tell us a bit about that. But I do think it's interesting to think about this both as individuals, as institutions, and at a national level. So I might prod a little bit with questions on your views on those themes, and perhaps sort of there'll be one or two little elephants in the room we might cover as well, which one or two of the panelists know is coming. So I think without further ado, and I don't think it matters really which order we go on, but I would ask Dr. Preetha Rajaraman from the US Embassy to say a few words, and perhaps start by telling us what you do here and a little bit about your background that got you here. Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks. So thanks, Simon, for that introduction. So here I represent basically the Office of the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the three agencies that most of you in this room know quite well probably are the National Institutes of Health, Centers for Disease Control, and Food and Drug Administration, all of who have an in-country presence. But I do also represent the other 11 agencies that are not here, but do sometimes have work here, such as our mental health agency, SAMHSA, and our human resources services agencies. In terms of my background, what got me here, so my background is in, my training is in cancer genetics and epidemiology. I was an intramural scientist at NIH for many years, and then moved on to manage the South Asia program for the NCI before taking on this current position, which is basically the entire health portfolio here in India.
Thank you. So perhaps just say a few more words about why the collaboration between the US and India is important, perhaps to you as an individual, and then reflecting perhaps why that's also important to the institution, the NIH, where you used to work.
Absolutely. So I'll start actually by flipping that order and saying, how can it not be important?
Yes. Yeah.
So taking it sort of at the broadest level, how can the world achieve its sustainable development goals without our partnership with India. So if India doesn't achieve them, then we, the world, will not achieve them. Diseases no longer, well, they've never known any boundaries. And so certainly, if you pick up a bug on a plane today, tomorrow it will be in another part of the world. And so really, sort of very broadly, we think that international collaboration is important. Why India? Well, first of all, so much of the disease burden on both ends of the spectrum, whether it's infectious diseases or more recently chronic diseases, are here in India. But apart from that sort of dire picture, more exciting for us is the fact that there really is huge potential here in India, both in terms of the caliber of the scientists, of the innovation landscape that is growing stronger and which Wellcome has and the India Alliance have really helped to build. And in terms of, there are scientific questions, quite honestly, that are just better answered here in India than they are elsewhere, because the local pressure is just higher to find the answers to those questions. And so that's why, as an institution, we're here. Personally, why is it important to me? Well, obviously, my parents, my ancestors are from here in India, and so I am deeply personally connected to here. And so that's sort of the second angle to the question.
Good, that's nice. We'll come back to you, but thank you for that. So, Dr. Arabinda Mitra, I'm just, as I said, when I read through your brief bio, I was so excited to see that you'd worked in the Antarctic. So I wonder if you just, perhaps just very, I know it's not what we're here for, but I'm sure people would love to hear a little bit about your work in the Antarctic, and then maybe you can help us reflect on what's important to India in the way it collaborates with the world, and that's a big question.
Thank you, Simon, and good afternoon to all of you. Yeah, you remembered me of my days in Antarctica. Of course, I had more black hair then. But yes, Antarctic is a living example where without cooperation, nothing happens. And that is where I actually learned the trick of the trade. And ever since then, I have been involved in the international collaboration. So my association with this whole, milieu of international cooperation has been more than now 30 years almost, starting from Antarctica. And subsequently, having moved to the Department of Science and Technology as the head of international division, and of course the founding executive director of the Binational Indo-US Science and Technology Forum, and in my current portfolio also as scientific secretary in the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, I have a much larger portfolio in terms of where international collaboration is looked as an important tool today in this whole game plan as India stands today amongst the Committee of Nations. So yes, so that's what I said. Antarctica is a living example where one can see that science is global, even though technology may be local. But all of us know as scientists that science is global. And today the problems that we face, as Preetha said, they do not respect any geopolitical boundaries, whether it is water, you name it, I need not repeat it. No nation alone in the world can answer these questions, because the infrastructure is limited, the bandwidth is limited, and we are looking at time frames, which we can, if we work collectively, we'll be able to deliver it much, much more quickly. So I think, therefore, international collaboration is not a fashion. It used to be maybe 20 years back, but it is a necessity today. The more we collaborate, the more we cooperate, the more there is a chance that humankind is able to sustain. Because today, competition in this sphere is not really going to take us anywhere. So that's very critical.
Dr. Mitra, are you able to give us a little bit of insight into sort of where your government prioritizes? Are there particular subjects? Are there particular countries or parts of the world where you prioritize?
Well, the government doesn't prioritize by way of subjects or any part of the world, honestly speaking. But essentially, our entire global engagement is based on the fact that it should add value to the national programs. That's very, very critical. Now, if you talk to me about international collaboration 15 years ago or 20 years ago, or when I started my career as a researcher, it was very, very reactive. Somebody comes and say, oh, would you like to work with this? I'm bringing in so much of fund, and these are what we want to do. India would jump in. But now the entire involvement of India in the international collaboration is very, very proactive. Certainly when I said proactive, these have to be aligned with some of the national missions that we are doing. But at the same time, it also looks into the larger spectrum of human capacity building, which is very, very important, irrespective of the area. But one new element that has now been added in the whole paradigm of international collaboration, which was not there in the past, is this whole aspect of innovation and entrepreneurship. And as all the world realizes, and most of us as scientists have to answer, that how is science going to benefit society, how is science going to touch the lives of people, how is science going to contribute to the economy of the country and to the knowledge economy of the 21st century, so to speak. So this paradigm of innovation and industrial R&D is become a new element now in this. So much of our focus also has been, including with all the countries, UK, US, and so many of them, is engaging in a new element of innovation and industrial R&D that could lead into product development that can go to the market space,
So
which is a new thing, which was not there in the past.
And for that, of course, you have BIRAC and your collaboration with the Gates Foundation.
That's right. We have several mechanisms, BIRAC of DBT, and we have the Global Innovation Technology Alliance, which is a unique platform that has been created between DST and CII, where 7 countries are partner countries. And the models are very, very simple. A project, 25% of the cost of the project comes from the government, 25% from the partnering industry is reflected on the other side as well. And using that model in 2 years' time frame, we are actually delivering products that can go to the market.
Good. So just to interrupt, audience, you've got a member of your government here who's well warmed up now. Anyone got a question at this point? I'm sort of breaking a little bit with tradition. Does anybody want to ask him a question? Mike Turner, I thought you wouldn't remain quiet for long.
Not an Indian national, but we'll gloss over that detail. I'm curious, you came up with the phrase, international action should add value to our national program. I understand entirely where that's coming from.
Mike, we don't hear you very well, so let's
sorry.
just make...
You'd used the phrase that an international activity should add value to a national program. To what extent do you think you should also flip that around? And there's some measure of moral obligation as a member of the G20, a very major player in the world, that you actually have national programs that should reflect an international agenda.
Yeah.
There's a gentle challenge.
Yeah, well, when I say so, if you look at the national programs now of any country, they're pretty much international in nature. I mean, as I said, all these challenges are so global. You really cannot, I have been interacting with 44 countries, in my capacity of head international. It's so similar. I mean, the areas are so, that's what I used to say that, and the large number of problems, the uniqueness of India, Preetha talked about, we have all the problems in the world that you can think of. So whether I'm talking to South Africa or whether I'm talking to Japan or to UK or to US, there is some common element that will always come out. So that really made life easy for me to actually engage in international collaboration. So obviously, as I told you, the national programs do remain important, but we have such a wide bandwidth of national programs itself. Of course, there are certain priorities, but these priorities are pretty much global in nature these days. Whether it's energy, food, water, you name it, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, so.
We have so many questions for you. Let's move. I want to pass the microphone down to Lalita and put you on the spot. And if you say a few words about yourself, and you're at the moment managing a program between India and Germany.
Yes. I come from an organization, Indo-German Science and Technology Center, which is set up few years back, 7 to 8 years back, between DST, Government of India, and BMBF, Germany. The purpose of this organization was to promote application-oriented projects with a view to get societal benefits. So Germany being very advanced in technologies, and India having a lot of opportunities and manpower and intellectuals, young intellectuals, the governments thought it would be a very good opportunity to bring these two countries together and put up money so that it will come out in terms of some result for the benefit of society. So having said this, I have the privilege to be the second staff in Indo-German Science and Technology Center, now heading the scientific team, and with generous support from DST, my boss, Dr. Arabinda Mitra, and German. And we are now in the second stage of growth. When I say that, it means when the center was set up, both the governments agreed to contribute 2 million euros per year for 5 years. And in 2017, it is, in fact, 2014, it is doubled. The contribution doubled to 4 million euro, and the center is, it is extended up to 2022 with a condition that if there is no disagreement between both the countries, it will extend up to 27, and then they will take a view. So
Lalita,
we started with...
May I just interrupt you for a second? So a lot of our discussion, obviously, the last 3 days has been about the biosciences, but I'm guessing that you're covering a much broader area. And I wonder if you could just help reflect, actually, in which other subjects or sectors that you find there's the most demand or the most successful collaboration?
We do not have specific thematic areas in the overview, but every year we do have specific thematic areas for the current call. So we do have 2+2 project program. That means it is with an industry support from India and Germany with academic. That means basic, there should be a scientific content plus it should be it will bring to some application oriented result. So in only one of the calls we had biotechnology, life science as the thematic area, but we had 4 projects, and 3 were in plant sciences. After that, we couldn't consider it as the most urgent, because biotechnology, life science is supported mainly heavily by DBT. Then in 2014, we had a call in medical technology, where India is lagging far behind, whereas Germany has shown its presence in the international market. And other than that, we couldn't advertise a call for biotechnology yet. So mostly it is advanced manufacturing, then environmental technologies, water, pollution related, etc. So now we have some more newer programs. That is, we realize that it is difficult to bring this people, industry, institute from both the countries together in one day. So to support that, we thought it is better to create platforms where IGSTC can put in some money for organizing bilateral workshops, where these people will meet, technologists, scientists, etc. And they will discuss on some ideas which may help both the countries to develop into successful projects. And then following to that, we advertise 2+2 grant calls in the similar thematic area. So that has been shown some success, and we are getting more and more projects, project applications as time passed. And we are hopeful that some of the projects have reached to the level that they can, they could produce some prototypes and it may move further. So that is the stage where we are, and now IGSTC is planning for setting R&D network centers with a view to support mobility, so that for collaborations, to creating collaborations between both the countries, between different institutes or industries, IGSTC will support the travel cost, because those will be some huge programs which IGSTC may not be able to support in infrastructure or in manpower or other costs, but travel cost IGSTC can support. We hope in the coming days this bilateral program, at least with Germany, it will flourish much more.
Does anybody have a question for Lalita, just on India-Germany collaboration? No? Is it back, someone? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have any organic collaboration funding, in the sense not specific
answer that question. Can I answer that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm just answering it, having handled the German program. We have collaboration with almost 7 German entities, right from DFG to DART to, to Helmholtz, to Humboldt, to PMBF. So different strands of cooperation have different mechanisms. When you say organic, I'm not very clear, but essentially some of the calls, like the DAT calls, are open across. It is not area specific, but the challenge that happens is when we do a call with Germany, if we do it all across the, without defining the areas, we are, flooded with so many applications, it becomes very difficult then to sort of choose and pick the best one. So strategically, we have therefore taken decisions that with some of the agencies, it would be focused calls. The Indo-German Center calls are focused, that is the reason. But as I told you, with the calls that we do with DART, they are just all across, it is not focused to any particular area.
But every call is defined.
The call with DART doesn't have any area, so anybody can apply to that. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to just tell you, Germany, in terms of the impact factor of papers that India publishes, in collaboration with Germany is the highest. And when you say what is the value of international collaboration, I want to figuratively mention that whereas the national average impact factor is 3.7, the papers that we do through international collaborations have an average impact factor of 5.7. And with Germany, it is the highest, it is 7.4. So our German collaboration is perhaps one of the oldest, much, in fact, precedes our US and UK formal collaborations, I would say.
Interesting. Thank you. So, Dr. Alka Sharma from DBT, would you just say a few words to introduce yourself? I know you were active at Valor some years ago, and now you have a more general responsibility at the DBT, so perhaps you can reflect a little bit on your own role, and then the importance that DBT attaches to international collaboration.
Thanks, Simon. Good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, collaboration is the key to connect right kind of people to get the desired goals. So collaboration is really important to bring the right kind of people on the same platform to work together towards the common goal. So both national and international collaboration is essential because through these collaborations, because we all know that science has no boundaries. So linkages with experts across the globe and also involvement of stakeholders from wider society research network is essential to identify important key research questions with their solutions. So realizing the importance of international collaboration, the Department of Biotechnology is promoting international collaboration since its inception. And currently we have established collaborations with almost all major countries in the world. And fostering global alliances is one of the key components in the National Biotechnology Strategy document. And this strategy has been formulated by DBT in consultation with clinicians, researchers, leaders of industry, NGO, policymakers, regulators, and this has been approved by the government. And this has a major emphasis on international collaboration. This includes bilateral and multilateral collaborative R&D programs, collaboration with non-government organizations, foundation, and also emphasis has been given on human resource development. We also have membership with professional bodies like AMBO for strengthening scientific interaction and collaborative research. And India is one of the member states of Human Frontier Science Program Organization, and where the collaboration is between India and Europe. Currently, we have ongoing collaboration with Novel Media to organize Nobel Prize series for 5 years in India. So, in a nutshell, the DBT has given emphasis to international collaboration right from the beginning. Now we are also coming forward to enhance that collaboration to the next level. And here I would like to give some examples. For example, Vaccine Action Program is the oldest collaboration in DBT for almost now about 30 years between DBT and NIH. And under this program, an indigenous vaccine has been developed from end-to-end process through under WAP, that is rotavirus. The other vaccine projects are at different stages of development. Now DBT has gone ahead and working with global CEPI to work and develop the India-specific component of CEPI, that is we call NCEPI, and the focus is on diseases with epidemic potential. Similarly, we have 10 years back, we started program, a biodesign program with Stanford University, where the aim was to create a pool of medical innovators and entrepreneurs. And initially, we used to send our fellows there to learn the biodesign process. And after a few years now, the fellows from Australia, Japan are coming to join hands with Indian team here to develop technologies and commercialization, and it's an end-to-end biodesign process. And following this process, the outcome is very encouraging. More than 100 innovators have been trained in medical technology innovation, and now we are going ahead with other countries to expand this program further. Similarly, there are many other mission programs. One I would like to highlight that DBT is a founder member of Mission Innovation of Global Clean Energy Innovation, where this is a global initiative of 23 countries and European Union. And this is something that where there 8 projects are now ongoing projects under this initiative, and DBT is participating in all the 8 projects in Global Clean Energy Innovation Mission Program. Similarly, there are AMR program with UK, and then now we are now in the process of formalizing this to become a member of Global AMR R&D Hub. And we are also now initiating dialogues with a Shah country for multilateral collaborative research programs. And the BIREC has been set up by DBT as the public sector undertaking, and BIREC, many of the programs where we are now involving industry that we are being implemented through BIREC, and these are now resulting very encouraging results in terms of capacity building, collaborating R&D, technology developments, and also validation, evaluation, testing, and so on.
That's why you're all so busy. I wonder if either yourself or Arabinda just might reflect on what the biosciences learns from the physical and chemical sciences. I read a little, and I think those are actually, although, for me, my whole world here is actually sort of biosciences and population health. But you have huge collaborations, I think, in the physical sciences and chemical sciences. Do you share experience, and what can the biosciences learn from the other sciences?
Well, basically, the models that we have used could be replicated, also in biosciences. But yeah, there are certain subjects which require compulsorily, international collaborations, like, astronomy, or particle physics, high energy physics, where, you have these mega science projects, so to speak, where India is, member of, like, the CERN, recently the LIGO, the 30-meter telescope, the square kilometer array, and so many of them. Of course, so the models that we have used, could be very well used in the biosciences. And one of the very successful models that I have been able to see happen is the virtual network centers that we started with the United States through the Indo-US Forum, where what we simply do is the best and the brightest groups in the 2 countries, which are already endowed and have been nationally funded, we simply provide enough glue to them so that they can interact through an exchange process. The PIs, their students, working in similar areas in 2 different countries between the US and India. But they are, mind you, the most important thing here is today science is multidisciplinary and multi-institutional. So more that we work across institutions will be more effective. So when I talk of virtual network center, we had a model which we said minimum 2+2, where there needs to be two institutions and from two different disciplines, right? So that's how you can connect a biologist with a physicist, or a biologist with a data scientist, or a biologist with even a chemist. So these are virtual network centers which are very interdisciplinary in nature. And what you really do is provide enough money, their resources, for people to move back and forth so that they can work together and leverage what I say the collaborative advantage in terms of leverage their own expertise and leverage their complementary strengths to address a particular problem. So this model is a very nimble and a very low-cost model, but at the same time, you're able to connect the best and brightest across countries through this model. And this has been replicated, I think, in the Indo-US Forum, if I remember now correctly, more than 40 such virtual network centers were done. Each of them had a 2 or 3 years lifespan, and many of them were in the biological sciences as well. So I think this is a model that could be easily emulated to connect people across the groups.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is anybody bursting with a comment or a question or?
I'm Professor Abha Singh, Director of Research Psychology, MIT University, Noida. I have a very pertinent question, and I'm glad, sir, you used multidisciplinary. Depression is going to be the next worldwide problem, and India would be leading in this. So as a psychologist, I have a lot of concern. We do a lot of things on this preventive mental health for young generation today. Depression, we know that there is a chemical imbalance in mind. And since it's a biotechnology, I think, group, I'm raising a point. We need to have a joint collaboration and multidisciplinary approach to treat this mind. And today, even medical science is talking about holistic treatment. Do we have some kind of, again, hope and scope for this area, psychological science, for the treatment and cure and prevention? Prevention is more important. Even WHO is focusing now on that. So I would like your direction and comment on this.
Does anybody want to take that? Yeah.
Very important question, because this we have a neuroscience division in our Department of Biotechnology. But here I would like to, because that Indo-Japan program we are doing in DBT, and where NIMHANS is the major partner in this program. There are 5 institutions, but since your question is related to neuro, so I will just focus on NIMHANS component. So there are 6 cohort studies have been planned and then already implemented, and this is one of them. So what they are doing, they are having genetic information for the 3-4 families, pedigree chart they have, and they are trying to figure out about what exactly is the cause for these kind of diseases, and they have a cohort studies and then 20 years follow-up. It's the first of its kind study in the world. No one has designed this study for 20 years follow-up, but it's a long time, but in, maybe well before that, they will be able to find out some reason for this, and based on the pedigree and also the scientists and clinicians, they are working together to find out the reason and also how this can be cured. And apart from this, there are many other R&D programs, but since we are discussing international collaboration, this is a major international collaboration in this area with Japan, because there is a, why it is Japan, because there we have a collaboration on IPS systems, Kyoto University with the Yamanaka's group. The collaboration is with for capacity building, providing training to our researchers, young researchers on IPS, disease-specific IPS cells. And they later on, they are having a biorepository of that, and later on they will connect this with the using how IPS cells can be used and for application purposes.
Good. I'll just invite Mike, my colleague Mike Turner. Mike, just say just a couple of words about how important mental health is also now to Wellcome. If you've got a microphone, and then we'll go on to another subject. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll come back to you then. Yes. Okay, yes, I will, don't worry, I won't forget Dan. I'm saving the best for last. Yeah.
Completely agree about the importance of mental health. Wellcome has a special initiative that it is launching quite soon on mental health. It will not be all mental health, but it will focus on mental health in young adults and teenagers, particularly on anxiety and depression. So completely agree with this is a global priority that's looming on us very, very fast indeed. Yeah. So watch the website. We're looking for a director at the moment. That wasn't a hint, unless you wish to take it as a hint.
Good. Thanks, Mike. I hope that partially answered your question.
Yes, I'm just going to very quickly jump on that and say that mental health is actually one of the US-India priorities for collaboration as well. And in fact, our National Institute of Mental Health does already have a significant amount of funding in India, but is actually looking to expand. And in fact, is going to, the director of that institute and several of the leadership are going to be here in India next week, really to look at ways to expand the work that's already happening here.
Great, thanks. So I don't know if it's fair to say I've left the best for last, but Dr. Daniel Shah, I've got three things, and I'm not even going to do the scary question yet. But I think the first question is, what on earth is a philosopher doing leading the UK research and innovation effort in India? What is UKRI? And just a little bit about UK priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Arabinda. Thanks, Simon. So I guess this is part of your sort of individual, institutional, national question. So I'm the Director of UK Research and Innovation. UKRI is yet another four-letter acronym from the UK, but it's a new organisation with a distinguished pedigree. So actually it's the new organisation that we've created by bringing together the UK's 7 research councils, our innovation agency, Innovate UK, and a new body called Research England that funds university research and knowledge exchange in England to create this one larger, strong, coherent research and innovation funding body. And India is very definitely a priority for us. We have offices like the one that I lead only in a small number of capital cities. We have one in Brussels, we have one in DC, Beijing, and I've been very lucky and have gained a lot of weight by being the head of the India office. How did I personally get involved in this? Well, we're a multidisciplinary research funder, so actually we care about all of the disciplines, and I think I can say something from an institutional perspective about that. But I think that internationalization actually has an inherent value, and that's my personal view. And when I studied overseas as well as in the UK. And I have a personal connection, similarly to India in my family background, because actually my dad came from India to study in the UK. But it's not unusual, I think, to move internationally to learn more. And I think that has a distinguished pedigree. Thousands of scholars were coming from across Asia to North India 2,000 years ago. And Erasmus himself was traveling around Europe, spent time in Cambridge as much as he did in the Netherlands. I think what has changed is the scale and the prevalence and the nature of that internationalization. So now for us in the UK, more than half of our academic outputs are with an international collaborator. The average UK university's research output is more international than the leading edge universities of the 80s were in terms of their publication profiles. And from an institutional perspective, as a funder, our responsibility ultimately is to use public money from taxpayers in the best way that we can. And that's to get the maximum excellence and impact. And we mean that in a very wide sense, in the sense of pushing the frontiers of human understanding and in the sense of delivering economic, social, and cultural goods, both for ourselves and for other people. And internationalization increases both of those. In terms of field-weighted citation impact, which takes all of the disciplines and normalizes them due to the fact that philosophers don't get cited as highly as biomedical researchers do. If the global average is 1, the global average for a high-performing research nation like the UK is higher, but the global average for international collaboration is higher still, is 1.5. So you get a 50% bonus as a proxy for quality for collaborating internationally. DST's figures show the UK-India collaboration is more than 2.5. The UKRI India collaborations that we've been able to measure are more than 5 times. So we're getting a lot more out of that public resource by collaborating internationally. And some of that is not reflected in the numbers. I think there are things that you can do internationally that you can't do on your own. And I think Arabinda actually mentioned this, but you can build teams of talent that no one country, no matter how vast, could supply. You can work at scale. You can bring together pre-existing investments from many parties to let you do stuff at speed. And you can pool risk in terms of big infrastructures like CERN, like the Square Kilometre Array, that we're both partners in. And you can also have diversity of talents. And I think that inherently helps you learn and to move more quickly. So we're making big changes for ourselves, in part in order to be an attractive partner internationally. So we are bringing all of our research councils and our innovation agency together to be one new organisation. We're making the largest investment that we've made in research and innovation for certainly my lifetime. And for our international priorities in general, I think I won't list all the challenges because they've already been listed, but actually there are some about how we work that I think are priorities for us. So one is I think that we want to work across disciplines, and we've changed ourselves in order to do that better because we think that science is changing and society is changing. We are increasingly trying to bring business-led innovation and research together, and I think that's mirrored in the conversations that we've been having for many years with our Indian partners, but also infrastructure and people, because those big pieces of infrastructure, and that includes data sets as well as kit, are training grounds for the next generation of talent, but they also only work if they've got the talented people to harness the data. We're increasingly focusing on global challenges, and I think that, again, is not unique to us. You see that in many countries' ways of structuring their collaborations, although we use different languages. And those challenges are both, the cutting-edge industries of the future in quantum or in AI or in the future of mobility, electric vehicles, addressing the problems of aging, but also the global challenges that we all share. For example, about how do we answer the question that Vijay Raghavan asked a couple of weeks ago. How do we have growth without exploitation, without exploiting people in other countries, people in our own countries, or the planet in a way that isn't sustainable for all of us? And I think we want to be open. Open in the sense we've taken a lot of work, including with the Wellcome Trust going back many years, on open access, but also open to collaboration. So we, I think, are justly proud of our relationship with India, but we have a huge collaboration with the US, and I have colleagues sitting in DC, and the German-UK collaboration is strong, and all four of us have people working together on joint programs around the world. So none of this is either or, it's all yes and.
So Dan, thanks, that's really helpful. So I think so far in this discussion, we've actually now only got 15 minutes to go. I'll come back to in a minute, that we're pretty much agreed on everything. Now, collaboration depends on the movement of people. Now, I think there's an elephant in the room called Brexit, and because I don't work for the government, I can mention it. And I work for an organisation where our director and our policy team have made it very clear that wherever one stands on Brexit, what we do passionately care about is that people can continue to move and that their families can move with them. So it's so dependent on mobility. And I'd welcome either a comment from the audience or from any of the panel here, actually on what governments can do, and it's not just about the UK, there's other governments as well, what we can do to actually facilitate the movement of people. Yeah, please, yeah.
Venkat Narayan from Emory University, and I speak from 12 years of experience with the joys of collaboration and some of the despair with collaboration. So we talk of collaboration as it's beautiful, and I think it is. So let's take for a simple example of a US-India collaboration. Number one, it starts with the two organizations or two countries coming to an agreement on an announcement. And then there are different peer review standards on both sides. So that's ICMR and NIH. And then there is a process of getting through HMSC, Health Ministry clearance in India. And then the reporting requirements on both sides are different. And then simultaneously, you have an Indo-German call on the same thing. And crowded as the investigator capacity is in India, the same investigators go after that too. So my question here is, what do we need to do next to make the framework of collaboration easier, more efficient, more impactful, and reduce the administrative burdens on investigators and on the systems? Like, for example, can there be collaboration across the different countries that are working together? Can there be collaborations across Indian agencies? Like ICMR has certain rules, DBT has certain rules, DST has other rules, US-India engagement has some rules, US-German engagement has some rules. How do we make a more common set of criteria based on the best standards, giving up some national sovereignty, but achieving greater international good? How can that be done?
Do you want to take that, please? Thank you.
Well, that's a very tough question to answer, but as a guy who's been practicing international collaboration, I feel in order to collaborate, you need two hands to clap. So no collaboration can happen unless we compromise on certain things. You know, you cannot be stringent on following what your national rules are when you are doing an international collaboration. So that amount of flexibility has to be there in order to have international collaboration going. But there are always certain boundary conditions which all nations have to follow, same as also organizations or agencies have to follow. But notwithstanding that, as I said, you know, our engagements have been prolific. You know, almost all agencies that you talk about in the world, we are engaged with. You know, and these have happened in a very short span of time. So there are constraints. I agree. The processes are different. You know, many times what happens, the start date of a project will vary by 6 months in each other's countries because there are different processes that needs to be followed, clearances are to be followed. Notwithstanding that, you know, the international collaborations have been significant. Last 15, 20 years, our investments in that have also gone across, you know, not only in DST, DBT, but across so many other ministries, scientific ministries of the government. So I think, you know, it is a give and take process. Where, you know, you have to come to a common ground to collaborate. And some things you compromise, some things you have to agree, and that's how collaborations take place. So, and each country has its own way of doing things, you know. What we do with Japan is not true what we do with our neighboring country, Bangladesh, because, you know, they're also at a different stage of growth. So, and it also depends upon the stage of growth of a country and its advancement, its resources. Everything matters. So you have to tune that, you know, according to the country or the agency that you're working.
I'm going to pass to Dan, who I think is going to respond to my. Thanks very much, and thanks for the question.
Thank you. It's a really good question, and actually, I'll try and answer your question, Simon. But I think the end of my answer may connect back to your answer. So, I mean, firstly, I think you're absolutely right about the movement of people, but I would stress the movement. So we did some really interesting research in the UK, and we discovered that we are net break even on researchers. Pretty much as many join as leave. But the most productive people were the people who were mobile. Whether it was people who came to the UK for a brief period of time and then moved on back to their home country or to a third country, or whether it was Brits who left and spent some time working overseas and came back. And that was productive in terms of publications and in terms of proxies for publication quality. So I do think it's about movement. It's not about brain gain. It's about circulation. In terms of the specifics, I think we're now offering more visas as the UK to India than any other country. Certainly, we're continuing to make changes. A number of the Newton Bubba Fellowships by other funders like the Royal Society have been eligible for Tier 1 exceptional talent visas, and I know that there's been an increase in new forms, for example, entrepreneurship visas. UKRI has just become a Tier 5 sponsor for government-sponsored exchange schemes. But we have investments in talent that are open rather than specifically about particular parts of the world. So we have a new, almost £1 billion investment in future leaders in both research and innovation, and it's open. It's not targeting people anywhere, it's just open to the best talent from anywhere in the world, whether that's from India or the US or Germany or from Bangladesh. And to answer the Brexit question, I think there's a very boring thing I can say, which is the UK Cabinet is meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon UK time. That's going to be well after we've left the panel, so I won't be able to say any more about their discussions. But I can say some very practical things, I think, about the framework programs. And I do think it's these programs which sometimes create administration, but sometimes at least create common administration between partners. So for the current framework program, the UK remains a member state. We remain eligible, including with Indian partners, under, for example, DBT and DST co-funded calls to lead and to participate with Indian partners. And although we're not expecting it to happen, if anything goes wrong, the UK government would underwrite the cost of the UK participation in those grants up until the end of the programme. I think we all as research communities feel that we'll benefit from continuing to collaborate very closely in global endeavours. I think that we are a top 5 collaborator for every other country in Europe, and they are among many of our most important collaborators. There is a cliche on every negotiation in Europe that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So we won't know for certain until everything else that's above my pay grade has been done about the future programme. But I do think there's a more general point about the collaborations not being zero-sum. and that they continue to evolve and to grow. So the discussions about the next framework program are already about it being more international, and in particular, we've got examples where we've built on past European work with India to now do Europe-India collaborations with multiple countries, led by the UK Research Councils in Europe, but bringing in Switzerland, Norway, Slovenia, Poland, Italy, collaborating with India. And those are models that can continue to run whatever happens. And they are one of the ways of working together to address global challenges, where we're all going to go through the same peer review process. And there'll be another meeting next week for a collaboration between DBT for India, Japan, China, Sweden, and the UK in London on addressing sustainable development.
Okay. It's a brave British civil servant who speaks about Brexit without hesitation. Thank you. We're going to run out of time soon, so I'd like to take these perhaps as just brief comments. So first you and then you. Thank you.
I agree completely with Venkat in terms of international collaborations. I would say that the obstacles he's talking about, they put investigators in a position where such engagements are not for the faint-hearted.
Right.
And I don't say this lightly.
Yeah.
So what I see happening over and over again is certain pockets of investigators develop very deep collaborations and others never enter the fray because negativity surrounds those international collaborations. But then talking about this movement thing, I think one of the frustrations that I see is that there is no dearth of fellowships within India where it is funded very heavily at the PhD student level and the postdoc level.
Yeah.
But when it comes to movement, there is no dearth of fellowships from 2 months to 3 months to 6 months. And I think in biomedical research, it is not enough time. What I would say is, and something that the India Alliance does well is, I think they have 12 to 18 month time period to go away. We should allow for more fellowships for longer duration of training, and many more of these people will come back with much more solid training, and all of those alliances are building up on those high quality publications which come automatically.
Thank you. Over here.
So, we've heard the call. We want to internationalize, and in our institutions, we've done that. We do international collaborations, we bring in international students, we even hire international faculty. But at every stage, the Indian government or the administrative apparatus does its best to discourage or even intimidate, in some cases, international researchers from coming to India through the visa application system and all the follow-ups that they have to do annually, repeatedly, year after year after year. All this is just talk unless those kinds of things on the ground change. Money is not going to change it.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a quick response to that? Or?
So in fact, that was going to be one of my last points when you'd said think about things that we should think about going forward. But certainly, this is a very complex environment in many ways, and the regulations are no exception. And I think that is actually one of the beauties that an organization like India Alliance can bring, right? Because you do have a little bit of flexibility, and retaining that is so important. And seeing if we can nucleate more structures like that, where you can sort of gather the different changing regulations, climate, etc., and be almost a one-stop shop for anyone who wants to come in to India. And it's wonderful that you have this now between UK and India, but really broaden that to other countries as well. And I think that would be tremendously valuable.
Do you know, I was going to finish this panel because I'm being reminded now we're nearly out of time. Where's Shahid Jamil, the Executive Director of the India Alliance? He's hiding somewhere. Yeah. So I want you to advise Dr. Jamil, what is just perhaps one piece of advice that you would give to the India Alliance, and actually the very practical and pragmatic role they can play in sort of fostering international collaboration? I think you may have just done that. You perhaps have already answered the question. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so that was certainly part of it, is see yourself as certainly broadening your number of collaborations, but also being that first stop for anybody who wants to enter India in terms of help interpret the landscape here and start and mentor collaborations all the way through. But the second part is maintain your dedication to very high quality science. And I know that this was something you grappled with early on in terms of inclusiveness versus excellence. And I'm really, really pleased that you've decided on excellence. But what you also bring, of course, is the local context, which the rest of us internationally can only get a glimpse of, and on the ground with all of your scientists here. And so please do continue to bring that focus into any of these discussions globally.
Good, thanks. So should we just pass that? Yes, 3 words.
Excellence, relevance, and impact. This has to be the driving force, because unless it makes impact to people, society at large, it becomes more and more increasingly difficult to explain our investments to the polity and people. And that is actually all across the country, the governments are facing this challenge. So the scientists simply cannot work in isolation within the 4 corners of the lab and publish papers which are of high impact, which is very good, but how is it going to impact the society, the people, has to be also kept in mind.
I'm sure if we had another hour, the scientists might push back to you on that. But anyway, let's move on. Dan, any last words? Your advice to Dr. Shahid Jamil?
I would welcome his advice as well, but I guess my advice would be to keep exploiting the privilege you have in this wonderful institution and your comparative autonomy to keep changing and pushing the envelope. And if there are 2 things that you're already doing that I think it would be interesting to see how you could take further, one would be reaching out geographically in terms of the work you're doing with Africa, for example, and thinking globally. The other would be reaching out in terms of society. I think in terms of solving global problems, India is indispensable because of its reservoir of talent, amongst other things. But also, there are many sections of talent that are underused across other sections of society. So the more you can reach out, because talent is randomly distributed and wealth is not, and the more you can engage the public and help them to understand the value of what you do, the better.
Thank you. Dr. Shah.
So as we all agree that international collaboration is imperative for fostering expansion of knowledge for the betterment of the society. So my advice is we need to work collectively. That government is already doing it, but there is need to put more efforts and need to work collectively for streamlining the processes which are involved during approval of the proposals.
Thank you. Lalita.
Our experience is that when the project tenure is there is good collaboration. Once the project is over, yes, they don't know each other. So my suggestion would be continue to have the same collaboration going on, probably without much spending, much expenditure you can do in the era of video chatting or conference call, etc. To continue with the idea, you do not need much money, much funds, but continue to try to get funds so that you can continue with more stronger collaborations. But please don't forget the collaborations once your project tenure is over.
Thank you. So I think we're 1 minute over, so we'll stop this. I'd like to really sort of thank all of the panel for their sort of very rich contributions. Thank you.